Now, let's get started on our next session. All Access Pass Course Redesign with Adaptive Learning, presented by Prucha, Senior Instructor of Spanish, and Kacie Tartt, Associate Instructor of Spanish, both from the University of Central Florida. Welcome, Anne and Kacie.
Thank you so much. We are both so happy to be here with all of you today. Again, I'm Kacie Tartt, now Senior Instructor of Spanish at UCF. I recently was told that I was granted my promotion. I teach elementary, intermediate, and advanced Spanish classes, as well as Latin American Studies classes at the University of Central Florida. So why adaptive learning in OER? We were seeing with the textbooks we were using that there was a one-size-kind-of-fits-all approach, and that was not what we were seeing with our students. We have a lot of non-traditional students. We have a lot of first-generation students. Just like UTEP, we're a Hispanic serving institution, and so we were looking for a way to serve our students more adequately and meet them where they are. And another thing that we were seeing is that adaptive learning was really being used mostly in STEM courses, but after going to a presentation at an in-house conference at UCF put on by our faculty for teaching and learning, I thought this could really work in the languages as well. You know, a lot of times I tell my students, just like in mathematics, we have formulas in Spanish as well, you know, where you can plug things in, and, you know, building a sentence it has its parts and pieces. And so I thought this could really be a good way for our students to practice and get the information across to them. It gave us a lot of freedom in course design using adaptive learning. Greater access, as I mentioned, for students of all backgrounds and types, as well as a real-world application, which is another thing that we were really focused on at UCF. You know, high-impact practices that would, you know, show our students how to use what they were learning, not just in Spanish, but in all of the courses. It's a university-wide initiative, and give them that real-world application. It was also something when we polled our students that they were constantly telling us, you know, this is great that I'm getting this information about Spanish in the textbook, but when I'm working my retail job or my restaurant job or my tourism associated job in Orlando, these are not things that are helping me with the public. And so those were some of the main focuses.
Yeah. Also, just to add on to this, we've learned, and I think this is probably true of many courses, that, you know, textbooks are not one size fits all. We have students that come to our courses and they might have all different levels of knowledge. This happens in mathematics, you know, it happens in the sciences. It definitely happens in foreign language, in our case, teaching Spanish. Especially in Florida, you know, we have many, many students who are of Hispanic origin, so they've heard Spanish, maybe they speak it a little bit. We have students who are not of that background, but maybe they grew up in Miami where all their neighbors spoke Spanish, so they already come to the table with a certain level of knowledge. And employing adaptive learning has really allowed us to meet students where they are and get away from that one-size-fits-all mentality that we were seeing with textbooks and courseware programs. Okay, Kacie, do you want to talk about the redesign of our courses?
Sure. So we started 2 years ago with the redesign of our elementary Spanish 1 and 2 sequence. We completely eliminated the traditional textbook. We did not go into it with that in mind, but the publisher we were using, when we asked about ingesting materials into the particular platform for adaptive learning we were using, they dragged their feet a bit. And so we just decided to completely eliminate the textbook and the publisher courseware. And we used only open education resource materials as well as self-authored materials. I mean, I think probably most of us here would say, if not 100% of us, that there are definitely things that we create ourselves to supplement what we're teaching in the classroom. And so that was what we relied heavily upon. And then also, we employed the personalized adaptive learning model using Realize It, just to give you guys an idea, or to tell you the platform that we used.
Yeah, and so our project not only has it incorporated adaptive learning, a revision with adaptive learning, but also a revision incorporating open education resource materials. But I just we want to make clear that when you decide to use adaptive learning, it doesn't always have to be with OER. Some of our colleagues use adaptive learning platforms in conjunction with textbooks. So we just decided to completely eliminate the textbook, but that is not necessary in order to use adaptive learning. So going back to why we decided to pursue course redesign, prior knowledge of subject matter, our courseware and textbooks were not one size fits all. Some students had challenges with online courseware systems where they had to access the homework. There were always tech issues, and a lot of times it felt like in our job we were supposed to be the tech support, and we were spending too much time on that, and it just was not working for us. As instructors with many years of experience between us, there's a certain level of fatigue on sort of the same old, but our students also have experienced that. And so we were looking for something fresh and new. The courses that we redesigned, into which we incorporated adaptive learning, are gen ed courses. They serve over 3,000 students a year. Many of the students take the courses because they have to, it's a required course. But part of our mission is to help them see the beauty of the Spanish language and Hispanic cultures, and to encourage them to continue on in studying the language. So that's another reason we wanted to look into redesigning what we were doing. Also, this project, one of its aims was to increase student success and to decrease the DFW rates, and we've been successful in doing that. And we've highlighted here textbook cost, and some of our colleagues in these sessions have talked about this as well. When we talk about access, one of the biggest barriers to access is money. In addition to that, there are students who they may have the money for textbooks, but they just don't bother getting them because they don't see why they should bother. That's something I have found out. That's anecdotal, but it does happen. Our students were spending $245, and they may have only needed the textbook and the courseware for one semester. So by eliminating that and eliminating this cost, we have saved in the past few years for our students, they have saved almost $375,000. That's in the past 2 years.
Okay, and as far as just how we plan to move ahead with adaptive learning, we have experienced so much freedom and creativity pursuing this. As an instructor, I constantly tell people now I will never go back to a traditional textbook just because of the freedom that I feel and the way I'm able to present the content to my students in a way, again, getting back to that real world application and giving them the language in a way that's going to serve them. I can go into the system at any time and change a question or put in extra answers, things like that, things that we did not have the control to do with traditional courseware. I'm able to present the culture in a way that I feel is more alive and vivid to my students. And so getting into my second bullet point, that autonomy and customization piece is also really huge. Student preference and demand, we have a lot of anecdotal data, but we will also share some of our project data with you to just show how our students have responded to adaptive learning. I met with a student just this morning who I'm writing a letter for to go to medical school, and she again reiterated how much she felt like the personalized adaptive learning really helped her move forward in her study of Spanish. And it really is student-centered. We have students, as Anne mentioned, from all different backgrounds and all different levels of Spanish coming into these first-year courses. And so we were finding, again, with the textbooks that, let's say, we would present the section or chapter or culture of Puerto Rico. We have a lot of Puerto Ricans in Orlando, and our students were telling us, we don't say that, we don't do that, we don't do this. And so having it more student-centered in that way culturally is really great, but also student-centered because it creates a path for them, a personalized individual path for their learning. And so whereas before they may have had to do 50 questions on, said versus the start, whereas now if they can prove mastery within the system, they don't have to spend their time doing something that they already know how to do. They can move on and work on a concept that they do need more help and more time on. We feel that this is very innovative and cutting edge. It is catching on, but there are not a lot of people doing this in languages, but we are really glad, that we've had this opportunity and that it is spreading. We are able to focus more on teaching and learning and talked about the time spent on tech and tech support with our students, and the level of frustration then really affected our teaching and the class in general, but now we're not dealing with that at all. And just repeating dividends with level of effort. From the outset, yes, there was a lot of work involved to do this and create an entire course using OER and our own materials. But now we're able to spend so much more time teaching and interacting with our students that we were not able to have before when we were using a textbook and using publisher courseware. And then just the analytics and data, we're really interested in where that's going to go. We have, data that we're going to share with you in just a few slides, but we have received now a third grant extension, and we are moving into intermediate courses, more upper level courses, so that students are able to use adaptive learning as they progress in the language.
Yeah, and the beauty of this is that now, because of the success and the good data that we're getting, a lot of our colleagues are jumping on board with adaptive learning, and so we really are working on scaling this up. So additional faculty are getting involved. This started out with first-year courses. Now we're working on incorporating adaptive learning, like Kacie said, into intermediate and advanced courses in our discipline. So it's pretty exciting. Okay, so we're just going to show you a few slides comparing student success and non-success. So student success is a final grade of A, B, or C. Non-success is D or F. And we can show you the data that we have with the courses we taught before we used adaptive learning and the courses after adaptive learning. And we're happy to say that success grades increased and non-success rates decreased. Also, our withdrawal rates and our drop rates decreased. And I really think that that has to be related somehow to the fact that students do not have to spend almost $300. That really holds them back. Even when they do spend the $300, a lot of times they don't get their financial aid money dispersed until week 3 or 4 of the semester. So then they're already behind. That problem has been eliminated with adaptive learning and using OER content. So you'll see here that where there's an asterisk, fall 2019, these are courses with adaptive learning, these are without. So our success rates were 85% in Spanish 1 in my courses with adaptive learning in fall 19 versus fall 18 and spring 18. So a few points up. In Kacie's Spanish 1 classes, if you look where the asterisks are in spring 19, summer 19, and spring 20 versus these 4 semesters, the student success rates, in this case, 91%, that's 3 points lower than summer 18, but it's pretty much on a par. However, 100% and 87% are definitely higher than the pre-adaptive learning numbers, except for this 94. So we consider that to be a success. Spanish 2 courses, in my course in spring 19 and 20 versus fall 17, our success rates were up 87 and 95% versus 69%. And in Kacie's Spanish 2 courses, in fall 19 and summer 20, they were 90 and 95% versus 91, 89, and 97. That's pre-adaptive learning. So this 97% in spring 19 is higher than these 2, but the adaptive learning courses in these semesters we have better numbers here for student success in spring and fall 18. So overall, we are seeing the numbers go up. I didn't talk right now in these 4 slides about non-success or withdrawal, but if you look at them, and I think you should have access to these slides afterward, our withdrawal rates have actually decreased since we started using adaptive learning.
Yeah, so just to give you an idea again of how we started, in fall 2017, I had 3 sections with an optional adaptive learning component. It affected about 100 students. I used adaptive learning for review. I will say that in the following semester, we had a textbook change, and so I made the decision not to continue on and use this as a review in my Spanish 2 courses. And my students were up in arms. They were asking, where is our Realize It? Because they felt like it was such a benefit to them to be able to review using this technology before they did some of the higher stakes assessments, which I found really interesting because, again, I just want to reiterate that when I used it in fall 2017, it was optional. Students did not have to do the reviews. In spring 19 and 20, we had between 5 and 8 course sections per semester, and you can see the number of students that were taking the courses. Fall 20, we had some colleagues who asked to join, and we increased our sections and have continued to do so as we have moved along. Additionally, in our department, we met with our colleagues from Portuguese, Italian, French, and German, and they all have course redesigns in progress and or are now using adaptive learning in their lower level courses. We developed upper level courses for fall 2020, and it was revised for fall 2021 and will be taught again in upcoming semesters. And so we have program-wide implementation plans, and that will affect over 3,000 students per year.
So a few things on what we've learned throughout this process. Sometimes it's really confusing to think about, where to start. I definitely think that it's a good idea to start small. I mean, we think that. You'll see that we're now working on incorporating adaptive learning, continuing to increase and improve our redesign for first year. We are now working on intermediate and advanced courses. We don't recommend doing that all at once. Start small. We think it's a great idea to work with partner or partners. It's always wonderful to collaborate and share ideas and also share the work because, as Kacie mentioned at the beginning of a course redesign with adaptive learning, there can be quite a bit of work, but the beauty of it is that once you've done that upfront work, as you're teaching, you continue to tweak and add and subtract and improve, but the bulk of the work is done. So it's really wonderful to share that work with the team. We're lucky at UCF because we have instructional designers that work with us and help us with these tasks. So there is a bit of a time commitment. In hindsight, some of the things we've learned are that we went into this because we wanted a fresh approach. We wanted to redesign courses that were gateway, gen ed, that reached a lot of students. One thing that we've realized is that this whole project has increased access for all students. Just the cost of the textbook, the decreased tech problems that students face. Back to the textbook, not having to spend money on a textbook, not having to get caught up and discombobulated with problems with technology has increased access for all of our students of all backgrounds. It's affordable because it's very low cost or free. Free in our case because of our student tech fees, but it's definitely less expensive even if you have to pay for the adaptive learning platform than using a textbook and courseware system. We no longer have tech support. We truly are focusing on our teaching so our students can focus on their learning. Kacie mentioned increased interaction with our students, and we teach these courses fully online, but I have to say that we have been able to increase our interaction with them and our personalization of the course, despite the fact that we do not meet in a physical classroom. And we just think that's a great thing for our students. using adaptive learning and doing this course redesign has allowed for a lot of interesting and exciting opportunities for us, for our students, for our department, for the university. We have students who've, gotten involved as course assistants, working with us, learning about adaptive learning. Like Kacie mentioned, some of our colleagues have come on board and they're working with adaptive learning now as well. And so that's kind of spreading through our department. And so it's pretty exciting. And last of all, adaptability. I mean, it's adaptive learning, but what we're doing in these redesigns are adaptable across languages, disciplines, departments, etc. So, Kacie, anything you want to add there?
Just that I know that we're going to have time for questions, and I've looked at a couple of questions in the chat, but just to reiterate what Anne's saying, I do, Mohammed asked a question about it, being successful with technical courses like engineering courses, and I would say definitely. And even at UCF, I think that, we meet in small cohorts with other faculty from other disciplines. And I will say that even if it took a couple, we had immediate success from one semester to another, and that was wonderful. But I think it's important to keep in mind that a lot of times when you make changes like this, it may take a couple of semesters to catch on. But I will say that everyone at UCF that is using this in any discipline, they have seen success and measured success. So
yeah, like biology comes to mind. We have a colleague that we've worked with in biology, and she has seen phenomenal success for her students. So thank you everybody for your time. And
as well, nursing.
Yeah, physics. Here's our information, and we would love to hear from you, and are happy to get back to you if you have any questions for us, either now or later on.
Thank you, Anne and Kacie. I see we do have a few questions from our audience, and I would encourage the rest of our audience to go ahead and submit any additional questions in the Q&A tab. So one of our questions has to do with kind of taking a step back in terms of definitions and an idea of adaptive design. What does an adaptive design do from your point of view? Exactly what is the difference between that and a regular course? And then could you also add to that why on some of your slides you also specified personalized adaptive learning? So could you give us some insight to those concepts, please?
Sure. So in a nutshell, the definition of adaptive learning is content, if you will, so for example, using an adaptive learning software application allows students to move through the content at a pace and a level that is based on the knowledge that they bring to the table. The technology software application can detect, based on student performance and responses to certain things, if the student knows enough or has mastered certain things to be able to move on to the next thing. And by personalized, that's just where we teach at University of Central Florida, they tack that word onto adaptive learning, because adaptive learning truly is personalized, because the software basically creates a personalized learning path for each student. Kacie, do you want to add anything to that?
No, actually, I was going to address the personalized piece, but you didn't.
Okay.
So with that in mind, on that flexibility within the learning that adaptive learning provides, how do you address student concerns with the variance in time commitment from adaptive learning?
Kacie?
I'm not sure I exactly understand what you mean by the variance in time commitment.
I think I can elaborate on that. In some adaptive courseware, some students will spend more time because they get either more questions or they have to go on some side journey, because maybe like if it's a chemistry class, it's their math that is the weakness in them moving forward. So they have to do some extra algebra problems in order to get back on task with the chemistry concept. So I think the question is heading towards, you do have some students that might end up spending more time on task simply because they have some challenges in that particular topic.
Okay, great. That's what I understood, but I wanted to make sure before I started answering. I can say that we have not had any students complain, if you will, maybe that's not a good word to use, or respond in any way telling us that they have had to spend too much time or more time. Most of the feedback that we get from students regarding their time on task is very positive, and they are happy to have the opportunity to spend more time, if you will, on the things that they don't understand. And I will say too that at least I can speak for Anne and myself, we are very clear from the beginning about why this is beneficial to the students and how it is helping them, and why we think that them having a personalized path is more helpful. And so because of that, we don't really have students coming to us or saying that they're spending too much time or a lot of extra time. I think because it's personalized, they feel like it is benefiting me, and it's not time wasted, if you will.
That's wonderful.
Yes, and the other thing is that Dr. Luke put in the chat something about how time commitment should be addressed on the first day, and that is addressed in our syllabus, and it was addressed in our syllabus before we started using adaptive learning. For example, you should expect to spend X amount of hours per week on the class, studying, doing the activities and the assignments, etc. That has not changed. The way we've developed and designed the adaptive learning version of the course it's not something that now has so much content that it's impossible for the students to do it. It's on a par with what we were doing before we started using adaptive learning software. But again, one of the things about it is that time commitment does vary student to student because of what students bring to the table in terms of their prior knowledge and their abilities. And if they don't know something they need to know in order to progress before adaptive learning and with adaptive learning, they still need to figure that out. So using the adaptive learning software actually is a boon. It's a plus because it's there to help them figure it out instead of them having to feel frustrated because they didn't get the quiz right or they didn't get the assignment right because they didn't have the prior knowledge necessary.
Okay. So it does look like we're running out of time today. Once again, I would like to thank Anne and Kacie for joining us today and providing their insight to a non-STEM adaptive learning challenge and bringing in that firsthand knowledge to us and sharing it with us. So thank you to our audience as well for your participation. Thank you so much for joining us today. The session may be over, but you can still mix and mingle with other attendees in the networking lounges. We encourage your participation in the themed networking chats that align with today's topics, or you can head to the exhibit hall and download valuable resources from our sponsors. Thank you and have a wonderful day.